Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Cooper MTG, and today I've got a quick draft of the Brothers War. Just get right into it. Start off here, we got an interesting pack. Never really seen this card before, so I just took a quick look at it. Seems like it's definitely a pretty powerful effect. We've got some other good options here. The Spider's really strong. The Cliff, Stomper is not the greatest, but it is a very solid option. But I do end up going here with the rare. Whenever you're playing draft, it's always good to take the rare because you usually don't get to play with them otherwise. So on the second pack here, we've got some interesting uncommons. I do see a Scrapwork Rager, which is one of my favorite cards to play in the set. Super powerful, and I think I am just going to end up taking that one here. Not a whole lot of other good options, especially not in white. The Gruesome Realization is pretty strong, but double black with our triple white really didn't seem like a great option at this point. So yeah, go ahead and take that. Here, I go ahead and take this Soul Partition. It's not the greatest removal in the world, but it's better than nothing. And again, not a whole lot of really great options in our color. The Cavalry's decent, but again, it doesn't really fit with the theme of the rare that we took. And I actually do not end up playing white anyway, so this pick really does not matter too much. Again, just taking my time, making sure I'm getting the right pick here. Yes, it's a solid card. I mean, it's kind of similar to like the Anointed Peacekeeper effect, but on an instant. And here, I go ahead and I think I take this Haywire Might, yeah. Just a super strong card. And here, not a lot of great options either. Ichor Wellspring is a super strong card. Honestly, the blue card, the cooldown, is pretty strong too, but again, I've taken a white and a black card so far. Or two white cards, black card, and technically a green card. So go ahead and go with the artifact there. See another Scrapwork Rager, which, as I said, I really love this card in draft. It's super, super strong. Go ahead and take another one of those. And here, the Disciples of Gix is a decent card, but it really works a lot better when you have like a Mishra and you can go put some huge artifacts in the graveyard, unearth them for 3 mana. But other than that, it's not that strong. 6 mana for a 4/4. Courser is also really good if you can get creatures in your graveyard. Drawing cards is amazing in draft, which is why I go ahead and take the Ichor Wellspring, because it draws cards. Here we've got another Scrapwork Rager. I'm very tempted to take it. That card's decent, the Prospector, but at this point I was still kind of looking for cards that would fit into the Kayla's Reconstruction Plan, which cares a lot about lower mana cards, but I'll go ahead and take that anyway because you kind of have that synergy where you're playing a lot of small creatures and then you're able to obviously get a whole bunch of Power Stones. Soul Guy Lantern, sweet card. Be able to replace itself as well as obviously exiling your opponent's unearthed cards from the graveyard. Here, not a lot of good options, so we'll just be taking something for the sideboard. Arms Race, pretty awful card in draft, which even though this is a quick draft, it's still sticking around, which if the AI thinks that a card is bad, you know it's really bad. So yeah, again, just taking some cards here to fill up our sideboard. Honestly, we don't really have a good direction at this point, but 2 more packs to go. Hopefully, we find something interesting as we get into our second pack here. And there it is, the Mishra. Absolutely busted in draft. Ward of having to sacrifice a permanent is so strong. We'll see that effect a little bit later on in the draft. But now I'm kind of wishing that I took those Disciples as we go ahead and move all of our white cards to the sideboard and draft the Mishra, because yeah, it's really strong. And yeah, we've got Scrapwork Ragers, we've got the Wellsprings, so we kind of already had the means to play the deck already. And in this pack here, we've got a couple decent options. I think I end up taking this Obliterating Bolt here. Removal is super at a premium, especially when you can exile and avoid sort of the unearthed shenanigans. So yeah, go ahead and take that after I think long and hard. This pack here, the Great Maw, or Cinder Maw, sorry, is also a very strong card. This will actually come back to bite us though later on in the draft. The players can't gain life clause does cause me to lose a game, but for the moment we'll just throw it into our deck. We've got a Taunos here, but not in our colors at all. The Infiltrator is going to be a pretty sweet card for us, especially if we can get some sack synergy with the Wellsprings and also being able to sack our unearthed cards. And here we have a Thraxodemon, which does exactly that. Another Haywire Might, pretty solid card, but having that sack outlet is going to be great for us, especially with Mishra and the Wellsprings. Here, kind of a dead pack. I just go ahead and take, I think I take the Mass Production here, just in case we end up playing white, and maybe we do, maybe we don't. But yeah, go ahead and just throw that in the sideboard. And here we've got some interesting options as well. Cloud Key, not that great. Lorn, pretty sweet card, especially if we're sacking our artifacts and being able to get them back. The thing is that obviously it's in white and we're playing red-black currently, but just go ahead and take that, throw it in the sideboard, and maybe we'll play it. Here I get another Disciples, but I really like the Skull Flayer, so we'll go ahead and take that one here. And then Raise to the Ground is a very solid option, pretty underrated in this set in Limited. Go ahead and throw that into the sideboard. And here I believe I just take another Infiltrator. Got some decent options in white, but I already have the one Mass Production. Maybe I take a second one, think about it, and no, take the Infiltrator. And the Infiltrator, again, having these sack outlets is going to be super powerful. That is also important. Soul God Lantern can sack itself. And I'll just throw another Haywire Might in the sideboard. Here we're just taking filler again for our sideboard. We've got we have 12 playables at this point. So we're really looking for some solid cards in this last pack here. Supply Drop and the whatever, I didn't catch the name of that. Not the greatest cards at all. And we open up a Sculpting Steel, which I think I ended up playing a singular time in this draft, but the upside seems really sweet, so couldn't take that. We've got the Combat Thresher, which is super powerful, but I think I'm just going to end up taking the Gnawing Vermin here. We don't have a lot of 1-drops already, and the card actually works really well with our sack outlet, as well as sort of being able to mill our opponent and then exile it using the Soul Guide Lantern. Fateful Handoff, I was really considering this with like maybe using an Ichor Wellspring to give to our opponent, but 4 mana to draw 2 cards, not that great. And I think that the Power Stone Fracture here actually works super well with our deck. A lot of synergy, and that is super important as we open up this Pendragon Strongbowl. Hard name to pronounce there, but that card is actually super sweet, and it actually turns out to be probably one of the best cards in our deck. Here I'm considering this Cliff Stomper, but at this point we've got a lot of black cards, so really not that great. Dreams of Steel and Oil, decent card. It is good that you basically can exile it, so it does handle all of those unearthed cards, so we'll just go ahead and take that. Again, we don't have a ton of 1-drops at this point. Here I think pretty easy pick, just going to take the removal. 5 mana is a lot, but being able to do 2 damage to an opponent as well, and you honestly are able to kill most creatures in the format using that. Here I think I just go ahead and take the Mishra's Juggernaut. Decent value, but again, having that unearth ability is really good in our Mishra deck. And obviously Mishra's Juggernaut, Mishra themselves, pretty good combo there. Here, not a lot of great options. Excuse me. So we're just taking a card for the sideboard here, which we will probably not play at all during the draft. The altar, solid, but I think we want more flexible sack outlet, like the Thraxodemon, where you can sack a creature or an artifact. And we'll go ahead and take this Trench Stalker, which we actually do have a reasonable amount of card draw on this deck, so it does end up being able to get Death Touch and Lifelink, which is super strong combo, and is actually a very solid blocker, having 5 toughness, even though it is 5 mana. But the Lifelink and Death Touch do make up for it. So here, just gonna go ahead and fix my lands, and then this is our final deck right here. We've got a lot of really solid lower end cards, not a lot of high end stuff, so we're not a super slow deck, which I think actually works out in our benefit here. So we go ahead and get into our first game against Mammoth Horde. Got a very solid starting hand here. Obviously I'd love to draw a land, but having 2 Wellsprings, a sack outlet, and the Infiltrator, which benefits from us sacking cards, is sweet, as our opponent plays a 1/1 Mana Dork, and we're just going to go ahead and play a Mountain and Pass, waiting patiently to play our Swamp here as they play Harvester, which is kind of scary. They now have a lot of power on the battlefield, so I have to play this Infiltrator. We did draw back-to-back lands, which is going to make this a lot easier for us. They play our Energy Refractor, pretty terrible card, not sure why they're playing it, but it actually does let them kind of synergize here. They can tap it with their Stalwart to generate a mana as they play a Mask of the Jade Crafter, which is a pretty decent card. But I think that if you're ever unearthing it, you're kind of in bad trouble. We'll go ahead and just play the Skull Flare here. Sorry. And it does have some big toughness on there as our opponent plays the Recluse, which is actually a really, really strong card. Death Touch and Reach, I mean, you basically kill anything you want, and you can put a creature or even put your opponent's unearth creatures back. As we play a first and a second Wellspring, our opponent think that's nice, so we'll go ahead and thank them for saying that. Pass it back to them. They did miss a land drop. They do have one this turn though. And let's see what they have. And they've got a Kill Zone Acrobat, which, in my opinion, pretty underwhelming card. It would be actually pretty solid in our deck, having a sack outlet. You're going to go ahead and rumble in with the Spider. I'm not going to block that. Our creatures, we're not going to trade 2 creatures for that one right now, especially because we have the mass production in the works. Now we can play our Strongbow, and we've got 2 mana here to sack these Wellsprings, which again is going to pump our Infiltrator, let us draw cards, pump our Strongbow, which at this point now we really have to. Unfortunately, our opponent is going to kill it, but we will be able to draw 2 cards here, grow our Infiltrator, do 2 damage to the opponent. As you can see, this is some really sweet synergy, and we'll definitely be taking advantage of this later on in the draft. And our opponent is going to go ahead and kill our other creature as well. And after some thought, they're going to go ahead and swing in with everything. There you go. Pretty solid block here. I'm just going to block the Acrobat because I do not have a lot of defense against flying in my deck, as well as it doing 3 damage compared to the Harvester also. Go ahead and untap here. Pretty easy play here. Just slam this mass production. We need some bodies on the board. This is also going to be really sweet with the Power Stone Fracture. Opponent plays a land. They're going to go ahead and crack this mask here. Get a 5/5, which we will then be Power Stone Fracturing on our turn. Go ahead and do that. think about swinging in, but they're just going to go ahead and pass back to us. Start off with the Scrapwork Rager here. See if we draw anything better. And we draw a Trench Stalker. After some deliberating, go ahead and cast the Power Stone Fracture, get rid of their 5/5. And then we'll play a land and just pass back to the opponent. They're saying nice. This opponent is really enjoying what we're doing. As they play their own Ichor Wellspring, they have the schematic card art. Pretty sweet. I do love the schematic art in the Brothers War. Really sweet. Got an Obliterating Bolt. I'm very tempted here, and I'm going to go ahead and do it. Just kill the Recluse. Play a land. Play the Trench Stalker, and I think I swing out here. Yes, because I'll leave one back to block the Harvester, but go ahead and swing out. It's actually somewhat decent for our opponent here. They are able to then exile a Rager from our graveyard here by unearthing. They play an Anointer, which is a very sweet card. And then, again, after some thinking, I'm going to play the Harvester, swing in, exile our Scrapwork Rager, but we do get a free block here to take it out. And now we are pretty solid on the board. Great draw off the top. We get a Soul Guide Lantern. Go ahead and get rid of the mask, even though, you know, it's not great value when you're unearthing it. And I think I'm just going to immediately sack this here, see what we can draw, and unfortunately it's another land, but we do get that Death Touch and Lifelink, which is a huge swing. 8 life right there. Puts us back up to 15, opponent down to 12. Play land and pass. And they have another Hoarding Recluse, which is annoying because it can kill our creatures. But we top deck beautifully. Thraxodemon, we've got a lot of 1/1s to be able to sack. That's going to be great value for us. As our opponent plays another Hoarding Recluse, gets in for 1 and passes back to us. And we draw another land, so let's go ahead and just sack a creature here. And we draw the Infiltrator. Wish we had drawn that for turn. And now I'm really tempted here. Again, our opponent's saying nice. I'm really tempted here to attack. And in hindsight, I probably should have. Oh, in fact, I did. Just kidding. I did not attack. In hindsight, I probably should have, because they kill our Thraxodemon, and again, 4 life is big in draft. Fortunately, we do draw the Scrapwork Rager, as we draw another land, play it. Again, thinking about it, I should have done it. I needed to attack there, put pressure on the opponent. The Recluses are scary though, and that was kind of what was holding me back. Our opponent plays a Battlefield Butcher, and they go ahead and get in for 1. As we draw a Mishra, which is sweet, a sweet card. As you can see, we can now get all of our artifacts back from the graveyard. I'm just going to start off here with an Ichor Wellspring. We'll unearth that and draw a Dreams of Steel and Oil. Our opponent, again, saying nice, as they get Pseudo Thoughtseized. We see they've got the Corrupt in hand, and we'll just go ahead and exile, I guess, the Acrobat from the yard. It is beneficial. It makes it more expensive for them to use their Battlefield Butcher here. Again, considering attacking with the 4/5, but just get in with the Rager, and they'll just bounce us back here. Good play from them, not letting us get that in our graveyard. And we'll pass it back to them. See what they have here. It's another Swamp, meaning that Corrupt is going to be doing 5 damage. Opponent taking their time to think. They're probably doing some crazy math in their head right now. and they'll just get in with the Gurgling Anointer for 1. We draw the Cindermaw. Sweet at this point, but as you're about to see, this will actually be my downfall in this game. We'll go ahead and unearth the Soul Guide Lantern, get rid of another creature, again knocking down the Butcher cost. Sack it to draw a card, pump our Infiltrator, and this is where if I play the Cindermaw post-combat, I win this game, and it really is mistakes like this in draft that kill you. Because, as you can see here, I'm going to go ahead and play it. Our opponent taking their sweet time. As you can see throughout this draft, there are plenty of players who take forever. And doing my best here. Go ahead and swing in with these 3 creatures, but again, I can't gain life. I'm sitting at 9. Our opponent's going to be able to knock us down to 7 here with the Battlefield Butcher. As you can see, just put our Scrapwork Rager on the bottom of our library. Pretty solid play. Not that it's going to end up mattering as they go ahead and knock us down here. So basically, all they needed to do was top deck a swamp. They get in for 1, hit us down to 6, and they have the swamp, and they'll go ahead and corrupt us for lethal, and we lose. Very frustrating to lose that way. Pretty stupid on my end. Go ahead and go in here, edit the deck, cut the Conscripted Cavalry, add in a Aloran, go back up a Plains for a swamp, and we can get back into our second game here. We're playing, FLP Loriano would be my guess. People need simple names like Cooper MTG, make it a lot easier to see. Just some deliberation here. I go ahead and take the 3/1 with Ward. That's actually like a pretty solid card against us right now. I am able to get off this Infiltrator here because I believe that the Thraxodemon is probably a little bit stronger for what we're trying to do. So go ahead and hold on to that one. Opponent plays a Plains, and they drew another Honor Guard. Yep, just making sure I did exile it, and I did. But Arena just has a way with things like that sometimes. Go ahead and get in here for 2. Our opponent could block if they want. At this point, we are somewhat racing. So they play a land, and they're going to play that 3-drop that they had in their hand. After they get in for 3, of course. Considering blocking here, but again, the Thraxodemon is just way too important to what we're doing. And I think in the spirit of using our mana here, we'll go ahead and get rid of their creature. Swing in for 4, knock them down to 14, and pass it back to our opponent. Gonna go ahead and play a Plains and pass to us. Pretty easy play here. Just drop the Mountain and play the Juggernaut. Our opponent thinking hard. And we'll go ahead and get in with the Infiltrator. Our opponent blocks. That's honestly a trade that I do not mind at all, as they play a Onulet, and we draw a Mishra. Again, one of our, actually probably the best card in our deck. We do have to get in here, but again, having that Mishra is going to be great to get that back from the graveyard. Again, our opponent took their time, so had to cut that a little bit. Juggernaut now in the graveyard. As you can see, we can unearth it for 3 mana instead of 5, which is amazing. Our opponent, again, taking their time to think. Got a lot of options over there. And they end up going with the Power Plant Worker. And here, I guess I read the Thraxodemon. I thought it was 3 mana or 2 mana to sack. It's actually 3. So I thought I was getting this great play off here. Oh, there's me realizing it, and pass back to the opponent. They are down to 10 though, and we have the Sculpting Steel in hand, and I think this is going to be the singular time where it ends up being good for me, as we draw a Soul Flare. But I'm going to go ahead and play the Cindermaw here. Just adds more pressure to the board. That's something I really need to work on in draft, is being much more aggressive. As our opponent plays a couple 1/1s, and they'll go ahead and swing in for 4. They can pump it, so I'll just let them get through, and they'll decide not to, and just pass the turn back to us. We draw a land, which is huge, so we can play both of our spells this turn. Sculpting Steel. I'm going to copy this the Power Plant Worker in just a second. Our opponent again taking their time to think, which obviously means that they have, well, I guess that's not true. They have the ability to pump their Power Plant Worker. But in general, when your opponent's taking forever, it means they have some kind of instant or interaction that they're holding on to. Go ahead and get in with our 4/3 here. It has trample. Our opponent deliberates for a while. Triple blocks. It's very fine with us. The Cindermaw is a sweet card, but getting rid of 3 blockers, now we have a huge advantage on board in terms of like creatures and size. Obviously, they can go ahead and pump here, which we would not be able to do. They're going to go ahead and unearth, and they'll swing in with just the Onulet. Gotta respect it. I'm not going to block though. And they'll hit us down to 9, and we'll gain that 2 life from unearthing. And again, after a lot of thinking, they're going to pass the turn back over to us. We just draw a mountain, and from here I do have the option to get in with the Power Plant Worker, but I think I'm just going to sit back here, see what they do. They could have still pumped and traded, so they now play a Swiftgear Drake, which spells trouble for us because we do not have a lot of protection for flyers. They're going to think for a while, put their mass production on the bottom of their library, and then they're going to go ahead and swing in with the Power Plant Worker as well as the Drake, I believe here. Yep. And they did still have the option to pump. They could tap their Stalwart here. But for me, that's an easy trade because, again, we can unearth it, the Sculpting Steel from our graveyard for somewhat decent value. We'll block. We'll pump. Again, our opponent, they could pump here, but what they are going to do instead is use their Gaia's Gift, which is pretty solid. Gives it a +1/+1 counter, but they'll just bounce back off our wall, and they will pass the turn back to us as we now draw a mass production. We'll go ahead and slam that onto the battlefield. I don't know what I'm thinking about here. Don't have a lot of options. I guess part of it was if I wanted to see if I could hold up that mana to pump the Power Plant Worker, but instead we really need to go aggro here. We're at 7, and our opponent again taking their time. They'll go ahead and pass back to us, and now this is actually a pretty sweet play here. We've got the Gnawing Vermin, which we can play to mill our opponent, and right here we're going to hit 2 really, really powerful cards from their deck as we hit 2 lands. We can, though, sacrifice the Thraxodemon, or use this Thraxodemon to sacrifice the rat and kill their 1/1, which I'm going to go ahead and attempt to do here. And in response, the opponent is going to cast a giant growth. Again, you got to think real hard about this. Admittedly, you should always take your time when you're in a game state like this, but opponent, all they had to do was hit me for 2 last turn, and then they would have won the next turn using that with the Drake. But I cannot complain. I'll drop off this Acre Wellspring, draw a card once our opponent decides that's okay, and it's a removal spell, which is going to be great for us next turn. I'm really considering attacking, but I think the right play here is to just wait. Next turn we're going to have a lot of really sweet options, especially being able to use that removal. Our opponent, again, having a real long think here, and they'll go ahead and draw for their turn, taking their time, and they'll pass back to us. Another benefit of sacking the rat is that we can now pump up our Gixian Skull Flare. I'm going to cast Unleash Shell, trying to kill the Drake because that is probably our opponent's strongest card. And they have another Gaia's Gift to save them, which is annoying, but it's not game ending for us. And again, more pump spells that they could have been using to damage us. We're at 7. Admittedly, we have a much wider board, and I think there we were like 1 damage off from winning. I was doing the math. We can though sacrifice this Acre Wellspring to then draw a card. Actually, we draw 2 cards as soon as our opponent lets us, as we draw a land and a Scrapwork Rager. Again, we get to pump up our Skull Flare here once our opponent lets us, as we draw another land for turn. I'm going to go ahead and unearth the Acre Wellspring, see if we can draw a game-winning card, and we do. We draw the Strong Bull, which is sweet. The pinging is actually super valuable. We go ahead and play that. I thought I was going to be able to draw a card. I always forget that Unearth doesn't work like that, but we'll ping our opponent for 1, play a Swamp, and we're just going to swing out here because the game should be over at this point. If I don't win, then, you know, I deserve to lose. So, swing out. Opponent's going to take their time to think. They'll end up blocking like this, and we're going to bash them in for 6 damage, which was lethal already. Again, we could have sacked 2 more creatures if we needed to. And let's get into our third game here. We're against Domismon, something like that. Another bronze player. Very solid hand here again. A lot of options. Hopefully we can draw a 3-drop. I'm going to go ahead and start off with a Swamp. Pass it over to our opponent, who's going to play an Island. We do draw the Soul Guide Lantern there, which will be good later on. But we're going to go ahead and just play the Wellspring. Draw another card. Pass to our opponent. As they play a Levitating Statue, which is a very strong card. Just double checking the Obliterating Bolt. It is still a sorcery, unfortunately. I'm going to play the Swamp here and the Soul Guide Lantern for no value, but you got to be efficient with your mana, so getting that on the board is helpful. Maybe we can crack it for a card if we wanted, but here we're just going to let our opponent pass their turn. Leaving up mana as a blue deck is always scary, but the good thing about the Scrapwork Rager is that they can counter it if they want, but it's still coming back from the graveyard. As they do, go ahead and counter it. Get a counter on their Levitating Statue, which is annoying, but not much you can do, as we'll just pass it back to them. Going to go ahead and play a land and a Thran Power Suit. So it seems that they're kind of like almost like a Voltron-esque deck here. They're going to go ahead and activate the Levitating Statue and hit us for 3. So at this point, I'm really thinking about a way to get rid of the statue because they don't have a lot of creatures, and we draw a Raise to the Ground, which is a perfect card here. I'm just going to go ahead and play the Infiltrator first. and then destroy that levitating statue, because that would cause us some headache later on in the match if we didn't kill it. Opponent gonna play a land and a Foundry Inspector. Perfectly fine with me, and they're gonna go ahead and equip up the power suit to the Foundry Inspector. I promise you they'll do it. Yep, there you go. And they're just gonna pass back to us as we draw a Thraxodemon. After some deliberating, I'm gonna go ahead and play that because it gives us a lot of great value with the Wellspring as well as a Scrapwork Rager. Go ahead and swing in here. I do like this trade because our opponent spent 5 mana basically on this creature last turn, and this allows us to draw a card. Soul Guide Lantern didn't seem that great in terms of exiling a graveyard here, so pretty good value, I would say. Opponent is going to play a Combat Courier and an Air Marshal, which is a pretty decent card actually. There's not a ton of evasion or reach in this set, so it oftentimes can push through that lethal damage. They sack the Courier and think real hard about what they're going to do before passing back to us. Pretty easy play here. The Gnawing Vermin gives us a lot of options. Wheel it around there. Go ahead and mill our opponent. And they have another Courier, as well as we got their Scrap Trawler, which would have been great value for them, but they will not get to use that. I don't know why they block here. Really, 2 life there is not that important, especially when we're attacking with an unearthed creature. As they play a Millstone, we're pretty far away from getting milled out here, but it is something to keep in mind. Yeah, I'm just checking there, 24 cards. In my experience in this set, Millstone is never good. Just going to immediately sack here, not even going to try to get in for damage, which, I mean, wouldn't have worked anyway. We have 2/2 to block. And here it seems like they're just going to be leaving up that mana to activate their Millstone. I am worried though that they had a counter, so I play the Juggernaut first. It also does kind of maximize our damage with our opponent not having any creatures on the battlefield. But they're going to go ahead and mill 2 cards. 2 lands for us, which I am not complaining about whatsoever. Pass back to them, and they do have a Disenchant to get rid of our Juggernaut. So I do kind of regret not playing the Mishra first there, but you live and you learn. Again, they're going to play the Courier, unearth it, sack it without attacking. Gotta respect it as we draw a land. Not making the same mistake here. I'm going to go ahead and play the Mishra. And after some thinking, I'm just going to go ahead and get in with Thraxodemon. Pretty free attack there. Yep, hit them for 2. And we will pass back to them. Opponent plays another land. I would say they're flooding out, but they have 1 more land than us only. Sack their Combat Courier. Draw a card. Do some thinking. Mill us for 2 on their main phase. Pretty decent actually, getting rid of one of our sack outlets there. Go ahead and unearth again. Sack it. Draw a card. And pass back to us. And now here we basically win the game because they milled over that Scrapwork Rager. We can go ahead and unearth that as well as the Juggernaut. Make sure to use Mishra. Draw a card, doesn't really matter. Unearth this, and we're going to go ahead and swing in for 14 damage here. Put our opponent to a singular life. These go away, but we are very far ahead on board. And our opponent is going to do a little bit of thinking. Play a land. And scoop it up. So after that first loss, we've definitely turned it around. I can't say it was just the change I made to the deck, because I haven't even used Lorne yet, but it was more just playing aggressive, not making dumb mistakes. As we get into another game here against Kai Guara, would be my guess at the name. I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Got a pretty solid hand here. I'm considering mulliganing because we don't have a lot of early game stuff. But we'll just go ahead and keep it because Mishra is so strong. Play an island and a frontliner. Pretty solid card here, but we draw a Wellspring, which is sweet, especially with our Power Stone Fracture, and we draw another one as well. Those are going to end up being great for us later on in the game with the Mishra. Opponent thinking really hard. Going to play the Air Marshal. Again, pretty strong card. And they'll go ahead, boop us for 1. Not too big of a deal here. And I'm going to go ahead and play this Gnawing Vermin. Mill them for 2 cards. Again, we're going to hit 2 really, really good cards here. As we hit a land and a disenchant, so not the worst. We'll play another Ichor Wellspring and draw a card. Our opponent is going to go ahead and play a land here, and they're going to play Prison Sentence. Allows them to scry 2. Just some deliberation. They go 1 top, 1 bottom, and then they're going to rumble in for 4 damage here. So at this point, I am short on lands. I do draw another one though, which is huge, so I can drop the Infiltrator and play this Power Stone Fracture. I was considering using the sacking the Wellspring, but this is sort of like a 2 for 2 trade, I guess, so it makes it a little bit more even instead of just 2 for 1ing myself, but drawing a card. And it would turn out later in the game that it would be important to have these Wellsprings. Opponent Evolving Wilds, go ahead and get a island, thinking real hard, and they will main phase Stern Lesson. I will never complain about our opponent casting instants during their main phase. And we are stuck on lands. Unfortunately, I am regretting somewhat not sacking the Wellspring now, but we can go ahead and smash in for 3 damage. Our opponent's going to unearth and cast a Zephyr Sentinel, which is actually a pretty sweet card. They got a little confused there. They thought they were going to be able to replay the frontliner, but again, unearth. If it leaves the battlefield, it gets exiled. Huge draw here. I'm just going to go ahead and blow up their flyer, because again, we do not have good ways to deal with that. Don't want them to be able to get value from that. Opponent saying nice. It was a pretty good play, opponent. I agree with you. I'm trying top decking that land, destroying your creature. And here I played the Trench Stalker over Mishra just because it is a 4/5, so it would be able to block the Warlords Elite. Warlords Elite. Even though Mishra is obviously a much better card. I'm worried about a counter, but scared money don't make money. We'll just go ahead and drop the Mishra. Our opponent thinking real hard here. Real hard. And they'll let it resolve. And we'll just pass the turn back to them. Probably could have attacked there, but I do want to keep the 4/5 on defense because I believe their 4/4 has Vigilance, and that is a very solid draw for our opponent. They think about attacking. Think real hard about attacking. And they'll just pass back to us. Go ahead and drop this Scrapwork Rager here, which is going to give our Trench Stalker Death Touch and Lifelink as we draw a land, which really does not do much for us, but we can go ahead and get in for 4. Our opponent will block. Pretty solid trade for them, but again, we are gaining that 4 life, which is very important. You know, that's like a 5th every starting life. Pretty sure my math is right. Our opponent thinking again really hard. but I believe they're just going to pass the turn back to us. And they do. And we draw a Soul Guide Lantern off the top. And this is actually going to be pretty sweet here with our Mishra being able to draw multiple cards. We end up exiling that enchantment because that's super annoying. I don't have any enchantment removal, so can't deal with that really. And we'll go ahead and get in with the 2/2. Opponent blocks, which is going to let us unearth it to draw more cards. And we're going to go ahead and play a swamp and then pass the turn to our opponent. We do have the option to sack the Soul Guide Lantern to pump our Infiltrator if needed, but we are pretty solid on board right now. Opponent again is just going to pass through their turn, and end of turn I'm just going to go ahead and crack it because again we can bring it back with Mishra, so I think a card here is pretty important. We also do have 3 creatures in the graveyard for the Skull Flare. Pump that up with a counter and we draw another land. I'm going to start off here with the Soul Guide Lantern again. I'm going to go ahead and exile one of their creatures, the Flyer, because that's, again, we can't deal with that very well. And we'll sack it to draw a card, pump the Infiltrator, and we draw. After our opponent lets us. A raise to the ground, not super great here. The reason I didn't play the Scrapwork Rager is that I wanted to keep the 3 creatures in the graveyard for the Skull Flare. But here I am going to go ahead and get in with the Infiltrator for 5. They will block and sack after some deliberation. And after they let us, we're just going to go ahead and pass the turn back to them. They'll untap. Unearth the Combat Courier. And then here is where they're going to find out about the power of Mishra. Going to play the Involuntary Lockdown, targeting 2 of our creatures, which is going to result in them sacrificing 2 permanents. So first they're going to go ahead and sack their Combat Courier. Sorry, they're going to sack the Power Stone, and then they're going to go ahead and sack the Combat Courier, getting no value from it. But pretty good value for us. Admittedly, we do lose these creatures for like 3 turns, but our opponent doesn't do anything, and we continue to pump up our Skull Flare. We draw another land, and here I really need to play the Scrapwork Rager to try to find something. It is going to be tough not being able to continue to pump the Skull Flare, but we draw a super strong card here in the Infiltrator, which is a little bit smaller than his brother on the battlefield. I do some thinking. I was considering raising to the ground my own Ichor Wellspring. I didn't know how it would work with Mishra. The ward, I quickly learned, only applies to your opponents. I was thinking I was going to be able to target my Wellspring, sacrifice another one for ward, and then draw 2 cards, pumping my Infiltrators, but it did not work as such. Again, end of our turn, opponent taking their sweet time as they play a Plains. Think real hard again. And then just pass it back to us as we draw another mountain. So I think we're just going to play a land here and pass it back to our opponent. Do a little bit of thinking, but don't want to hurt ourselves, so we'll just pass it back. That is 12 lands out of 17 in our deck, which means we should not be drawing a lot more. Opponent plays the Phalanx Vanguard, getting pumped by their Tactician. He's got Vigilance, something to watch out for, but we are about to get both of our creatures back here. And now we draw the Lauren. And again, this is where I'm really considering raising to the ground my own Ichor Wellspring. But I'm just going to end up attacking here with our 5/4 and our 4/5. And after some big thinking, our opponent blocks. We want to make sure that we kill this Drafna. It is a little bit more powerful, I think, than the Vanguard. And our opponent is going to go ahead and save their creature. Flashes it in, it gets first strike, whatever. We lose our Infiltrator, but we are able to kill 2 of their creatures. And I still feel like we're pretty far ahead on board here. Pass back to our opponent. And they're just going to pass back to us. And now we draw the Strong Bull, which, as I said, is such an important card, as you're about to see right here. Go ahead and sack the Wellspring, pump our creature, draw a card. And here we're going to get that Lauren value. Once our opponent lets us go through our steps here, play the Lauren. Get the Wellspring back, we'll play it again. Draw another card, which is a Juggernaut. Go ahead and play a Swamp, and then here I've got the option. I could get in and take out their Tactician, but I'm just going to save my mana here because I want to be able to pump the Strong Bull itself as well. Our opponent, again, casting a card with Flash during their main phase. Can't complain. This is actually a pretty decent combat trick, although it would really only kill one of our creatures. And our opponent is going to pass back to us. We top deck a Sculpting Steel, not great right here. But what I'm going to go ahead and do is sacrifice one of the Wellsprings. Let our opponent think. They're looking at their own graveyard, not sure what's going on there. But we're able to draw a card here, draw Scrapwork Rager. And you know what, let's go ahead and sack the second one as well. Really looking for some removal here. And you're really going to see the crazy synergy of our deck right here because, yep, we can go ahead and play that again from our graveyard. Draw another card. If we're going to draw an insane amount of cards, we get a Dreams of Steel and Oil. Cast this here just to take a look at our opponent's hand, and I think we're going to get an instant out of them in a second here. As you can see, their timer's going again. Yep, they're going to disenchant. Targeting our Ichor Wellspring. Not sure what you're doing, opponent. So yeah, we'll go ahead and let them sacrifice a permanent for ward, and then we'll just sacrifice the Wellspring ourselves to go ahead and get that value. Opponent has a land in hand, and we'll just get rid of the Warlord's Elite here, or maybe the Drafna. Yeah, the Warlord's Elite. And yep, we're going to do it again. Play the Wellspring, draw a card, sack it, and then we're going to go ahead and smash in for some damage here. Well, we would if our opponent didn't concede. We were so far ahead there. Our opponent basically needed to chop deck like a sweeper or something, and I don't even know if that would have saved him. Alright, Cliffy DRD is our next opponent here. A very solid hand this time. Definitely keep it. As you can see, the synergy in our deck has been really insane. Sweet, we get a Gnawing Vermin, hit 2 great cards again, 2 lands. Seems like we do that a lot. Pass it back to our opponent as they play an island and a Coastal Bulwark. I'm going to go ahead and play a land here and play the Gixian Infiltrator. Thinking? Nope. Ichor Wellspring. I was wrong. Draw a card, and we'll just pass to our opponent. It is kind of a big body, especially for 2 mana. So we're going to have to find some way to get through that because all of our creatures right now have 2 power. Here I'm going to play the Soul Guide Lantern. Just X out one of their lands. And then I will play the Gixian Infiltrator. I guess there is some value in having the Soul Guide Lantern on the battlefield. I could pump it up from 1 to 2 toughness. Not that that is likely going to matter against a blue and green opponent, but opponent plays their own Soul Guide Lantern, get rid of their other land, no lands in the graveyard for our opponent. And then, after some deliberation, some deep thinking, questioning the mysteries of the universe, I'm going to go ahead and sacrifice it to draw a card, and then they'll just pass the turn back to us. Alright, so here it seems that they don't have a ton of creatures in their deck, at least that's my assumption, so I really want to try to get this bulwark off the battlefield. We'll swing in with the Infiltrator. If they don't block, it's free damage, but they do, so we can go ahead and sacrifice a Soul Guide Lantern and trade off here. And we're rewarded by drawing the Skull Flare, which we can play and then pass back to our opponent. They play Aeronaut's Wings. Pretty bad card by itself. Again, as I was saying, it seems like in these blue decks, you don't have a lot of creatures. They are playing green though, but you usually don't see a lot of creatures out of these decks. Play a Swamp and rumble in for 3. Our opponent is going to play an Island and a main phase Coilless Rock. Again, if they don't play that on their main phase, I'm swinging out for 5 and they're killing my Skull Flare. But kudos to them for playing it on their main phase. Allows me to just get off this Juggernaut and then pass the turn to them. They're going to go ahead and attach the wings here if they wanted, but instead they're going to desynchronize, and I'm just going to put this on the bottom. As decent of a card as it is, I'd much rather have like a Mishra or something, so we'll put that on the bottom. Opponent scries to the top. Their rock has double flying, and they're just going to pass to us. Again, that's a race they can't really win. And we draw a perfect answer to the rock in Power Stone Fracture. So no one can smell what this rock is cooking anymore because it is now dead. Go ahead and play a Mountain and swing in for 5. Our opponent going to go ahead and tap down our creature. They think really hard about paying the 3 mana, but they won't do it. Right decision. And then they're going to go ahead and animate up their Power Stone token and pass to us. And we draw another land, so definitely flooding out a little bit here. Our opponent, though, sitting on 6 lands. We're on 8, and we've got 2 in hand. They're going to go ahead and pump up their creature again. Again, love people using instants during their main phase. And I think here I'm going to go ahead and, as they fake an attack, I'm going to go ahead and sack the Scrapwork Rager, I believe, in order to draw a card. I was really worried they were going to put the wings on the Power Stone, and then it's like a 7 damage in the air. It's like a 3-turn clock for us, which I would not be able to beat. We draw an Unleashed Shell. Sweet card, but unfortunately it does not do enough damage to kill the Power Stone. So we're going to go ahead and play another Scrapwork Rager. Here, I'm really thinking about playing the Swamp, but hopefully I do not. It doesn't end up mattering because for whatever reason they just bounce that back to our hand. So we get to draw 2 cards off the Scrapwork Rager. Admittedly it costs us a lot of mana, but we have a lot of mana anyway, so we'll just go ahead and pass back to them. See what they have. Gonna play a Forest and an Argivian Avenger, which decent enough card, definitely a lot better in the late game here. We have a lot of mana, and we actually draw the perfect card, and I think we can win the game here. So not literally, but essentially. So we'll blow up the Power Stone, draw a card, and then we can go ahead and Unleash Shell on the Avenger, play a land here just in case they have some counter. Just see with the Infiltrator. They did have the ability, obviously, to activate the Avengers ability, which they end up not doing. We'll swing in for 5 here, and I believe our opponent is going to concede right here because they are in big trouble. They play a Forest, and they're going to Surveil to the graveyard. We'll untap, unearth our Scrapwork Rager. Didn't need to do that necessarily, but we'll bash them in and win the game. Give them the good game. And there we go, ranking up to silver. Another match here. Now we're playing Haurai 502, something like that. This is not the greatest hand, but Scrapwork Rager has been so good for us in this draft so far, so I'm keeping this. We've got removal. Hopefully we draw some low mana cost stuff. So our opponent plays an island, play a swamp, and they're going to go ahead and play a mountain and play an air marshal. Pass it back to us, and we will play this giant Cindermaw and pass to them. We kind of curved out there, and drawing that 3-drop was huge. Gonna go ahead and swing in here. Our opponent blocks, and they have to have some kind of pump spell here or something. It's a supply drop, so they'll trade with us. We still get in for 1, and I'm playing the Rager. Again, been so good for us. Draw a card and pass back to our opponent. Again, this is going to be another game where Sculpting Steel does absolutely nothing for us. They just pass back, which I assume means they're just going to be cracking this supply drop. Yep, 4 mana. Don't have enough for the rock, so we can go ahead and play a mountain. Swing in for 2. And I think I'm going to just play this Soul Guide Lantern here. Get rid of their creature in the graveyard, and then we'll pass it back to them. Again, they're going to sack this supply drop here to draw a card in just a second. Yep. Perfectly fine with me. And yeah, we'll just end our turn. Opponent plays a Plains and plays the Airlift Chaplain, I believe. Anyway, they're going to mill over 3 cards. They can get back a creature or a creature with mana value 3 or less, or Plains. And I think they end up getting back this creature here. I honestly would have taken the +1/+1 counter on the flyer, because now they're kind of not in the best place in terms of blocking. They're going to have to 2-for-1 themselves if they want to kill our creature, and then we can still unearth it, draw cards. Again, that's why the Rager has been so good for us. Is no matter how much mana you end up sinking into it, drawing cards is still so valuable. Our opponent, interestingly, is going to get in here. I think this is a pretty easy block. We'll just sack the Soul Guide Lantern, draw a card, pump our Infiltrator, block, and kill our opponent's creature. They will have the ability to unearth it, but it's a pretty good play for us there. Untap, draw a swamp. I'm playing the Lauren here, and I think this is going to be the one time where our opponent does not play the Coilless Rock on their main phase, and we're going to get got. If I had left up the Unleashed Shell, would have been a different story. Go ahead and get rid of their unearthed creature, though. That was kind of my immediate thinking, but it is so important to play your cards post-combat. Some of them. Some cards you want to play before combat, but a lot of times getting in damage is so important. Here they're going to be able to kill my creature. They do go down to 8, and we can unearth it, but it was a bit of a misplay. They flashed it in, and I think we hit them for 4 more damage. Yeah, we would have put them to 4, and then the game would pretty much be over at that point. But they're going to go ahead and play another Plains, play the Phalanx Vanguard, and our opponent's going to get greedy here, and they're going to swing in with the Coilless Rock. Makes absolutely no sense to me. But I'm going to go ahead and sacrifice the Lantern here, just try to be efficient with our mana. They play the Tactician, pretty solid card, but our opponent here is in some pretty big trouble. We draw another Wellspring, and here I believe I'm just going to play a Swamp and then Unleash Shell on the Tactician, and that'll bump that Phalanx Vanguard back down to a 2/2. And our opponent just scoops it up. We're not exactly dead there, but we were again in a really, really good spot. And let's go ahead and get into, I believe this is the 8th match. Should have a record tracker on the screen. But 8th match here, I believe. I think I'm 6-1 at this point. Go ahead and play a Gixian Infiltrator. We've got a sweet hand here, but we really need to draw lands. I play the Infiltrator because if we don't draw a land next turn, we can play the Wellspring, which we do not. Feign as if we have some combat trick. I'm fine trading here just because, again, we're not great on lands. So getting their creatures off the battlefield is good for us because we really do not want them to get ahead. So we'll play a Mountain, and they'll play another Air Marshal, and we do draw another land. It's pretty easy here. We'll play the Strong Bull. Oh, and I forgot to announce we're playing a Kakan 2872, and they're about to learn a very tough lesson here. And now that I'm thinking about it, I think I'm 5-1 at this point. Go ahead and sack the Ichor Wellspring. Yep, opponent, you're getting blown out. I'm very sorry. And we get to draw a card, and we draw a Lauren, and we draw Plains. But here we're just going to play the Mishra because it's been too many times where I have not played the Mishra, and I have regretted it. So we'll go ahead and swing in for 2 damage. Opponent thinking hard, they're going to pass, a little bit concerning, but what we're going to do here is just unearth this Ichor Wellspring, draw a card, play the Swamp, much needed land. We're going to go ahead and play the Infiltrator first, just because I am planning on sacking this Wellspring here. I'm going to go ahead and get in. Our opponent, I think, is going to have some removal here. Yep, the Soul Partition. They're going to go ahead and sacrifice their Sword of the Meek, because they are short on lands. We'll just go ahead and sacrifice the Wellspring here. It doesn't really matter too much, but pump our Infiltrator and get in for 3 damage plus the 1, so 4 total. And we can still play the Mishra. And yeah, the Soul Partition card that I did not play. And our opponent's going to scoop it up. I assume they did not draw another land. And now we are 6-1. I'm very sure of that. I can tell because I'm getting close to the end of the recording here, and don't want to spoil too much, so you'll just have to watch. Got a very solid hand here. Again, just watch. Sculpting Steel is going to sit in my hand this whole game and do absolutely nothing. Opponent plays a Scrapwork Mutt. Actually a very solid card, and probably would have been really good in our deck. We'll play the Infiltrator. I don't really want to trade here because getting it back from the graveyard and card filtering is really strong for them. So I'm just not going to block. And I'm going to play the Giant Cindermaw. No attacks, really don't want to trade for a 1 mana creature, and unfortunately our opponent's going to kind of blow us out here. We're going to have solid removal, yep. Destroy our creature, get a Power Stone. I really cannot block here. But I'm going to go ahead and play the Pendragon Strongbow. Naked as in it doesn't have any protection, which is going to come back to bite me right here. Actually, I take that back. It's going to come back to bite me next turn. They do kill off our Infiltrator. We do have a 2-3 though, which I'm feeling pretty good about, considering using the Obliterating Bolt, and I'm going to regret that as they kill our Strongbow, bash us for 5, and now I'm in a really tough situation here as we draw another land. I go for the Scrapwork Mutt just because if it dies normally they do get to unearth it and get that value. I probably should have Sculpting Steeled the Mutt, discarded my land, but I really don't think in the long run it would have mattered too much. They play a Cinder Maw and a Haywire Might, and we draw a Skull Flare. We'll play that, play the Mountain, and now I'm gonna Sculpting Steel the Haywire Might, which is a terrible play. Definitely should have cast it on the Mutt. And on top of that, we're not going to gain any life when it leaves the battlefield because of the Dreadmaw. It doesn't really matter though, because they're going to make these fight. I definitely could have blocked differently and I would have gone to 1, but there's no way that I was winning this game from here. So yeah, I just killed their creature because, yeah, I do what I want. We'll die. Go down to 0. Sad. But we got one more attempt here to get to 7 wins. So let's get right into it against Department of the Elks. We do end up going first, which is great. Again, we're kind of light on lands, but we got a very solid start here. Play the Nong Vermin, mill 2 of their best cards right here. We hit a Fauna Shaman and a Mishra's Onslaught. Fauna Shaman, I don't know how good it is in draft. Probably not the greatest, but we're going to go ahead and cast this Dreams of Steel and Oil, and I'm going to get rid of that Dragon Engine because that card is very strong and you can unearth it, so getting that exile is great value for us. We're going to play the Argothian Sprite, and I'm just going to use my mana as I can and obliterating bolt it. Get in for 1 and pass back to our opponent. The Rock Hunter I'm not as worried about as the Sprite because they can eventually start putting counters on the Sprite, and our Rat blocks very well. Getting a little nervous here, not drawing any lands. Our opponent has a land of their own, which we knew about. They're looking at our Vermin, thinking real hard, gonna pass to us. We do draw land, and we can go ahead and play this Skull Flare. And that'll give us some more defense on the field here. Our opponent is going to play a Gaia's Courser, which fortunately for us, they don't have a ton of cards in the yard. In fact, I'm pretty sure they have the Fauna Shaman, which, interestingly enough, does not count, I guess. Go ahead and play an Infiltrator. They play another Sprite, which is actually going to turn out to be very solid against us because I don't address it. Here they can get in and they could pump if they want. I definitely should have double blocked and just killed it, got off the table here. But what I'm going to do is just kill this Rock Hunter. I think that's pretty solid value. And it doesn't come back to bite me, so. They play the Heavyweight Demolisher, which is a scary card. But with this Juggernaut here, I am going to be able to block it. And they're going to go ahead and pay the 3, which means that they're going to be attacking with that creature and not their Sprite because they can't pump it. So yeah, they're going to go ahead and get in. Got to kill it. So go ahead and double block. I mean, they use their mana for it, so you got to be efficient with our turn as well. And this will also get 3 creatures in the yard for our Skull Flare. And we draw another land, which is perfect, so we can play this mass production here. Again, we are going to run into the problem where this Courser, or sorry, the Sprite can't be blocked by artifact creatures, which means that we cannot just chump it with our servos. I believe they're servos. No blocks here. It definitely could have been worth it, but we draw a Scrapwork Rager, which is a sweet card. Again, so good for us. Draw a card, play a land, and here we're just going to pass the turn back to our opponent. Sit back, take that back. I'm going to swing in here. I've got the option to like sack my board if I needed to, but we'll just get in for some free damage. I was not going to be blocking with that creature anyway, so opponent plays a mountain, goes to combat, swings in. We will not block this time, and they're going to go ahead and put 2 more counters on it, and that's starting to look a little bit scary. So at this point, I'm like, alright, I'm at 9. How close am I to beating our opponent? I'm going to go ahead and sack the Scrapwork Rager here to have it in the graveyard to be able to draw another card. And even though that's not as much for this next turn coming up, it's more for the turn after, where I'm going to be able to play this Trench Stalker this turn, and then next turn, hopefully, play the Scrapwork Rager and draw a card, get the Death Touch and Lifelink. Pass back to our opponent here. They're going to play a Blitz Automaton, which I'll be able to handle pretty well here. They're going to swing in with the Sprite here, and I'm going to double block and then just chump the Automaton. Give them the Soul Flare and the Stalker. Just chump there. I believe they're going to kill our Skull Flare here. Probably the better play, even though we're going to end up gaining some life. Go ahead and just get the value. Sacrifice that servo. Ping them for 1. And that 1 damage is actually going to matter in the end here. So stuff dies, and our opponent passes back to us. So now I'm thinking about doing the math here. I don't think we would have won with the Juggernaut, so I'm going to go ahead and play this, draw a card, and we draw a Power Stone Fracture, which is super sweet. Just going to main phase do it, sacrifice one of our servos. Opponent thinking real hard. All they can do is surveil. Promise you, opponent, you got nothing else. Play a Swamp here, and I'm going to swing out. Actually, I'm going to leave. I believe I leave back. Okay, never mind. Not swinging out. It's next turn. I promise. Get in for 6. Gain 4. Back up to 12. Not making the mistake of playing the Cindermaw. There, I probably should have sacked the the Ravager, and our opponent's turn here. They can't play the Demolisher, which is what I thought they were really going to do, which is why I was leaving back 3 creatures to block, but they don't. So we'll sack the artifact, ping them down to 7, and our opponent will go ahead and play their own Juggernaut. And I'm doing the math here, and I think we win this game, but I was actually wrong. I think if they had blocked a certain way here, they actually would have beat us. I think if they block, I'm trying to see. I think if they blocked differently than the way that they do, I think if they block the Strongbow with their Juggernaut and then just block our 4/5, we don't win because I'm unable to sack creatures in order to deal the damage. I'm throwing up a stop there. It doesn't really matter though, because we're going to go ahead and bash them for 6. And again, if I had sacked the Scrapwork Rager, they would have already been dead. Things die. We'll sacrifice our servo and hit them for the final point of damage. And we will say good game to our opponent as we win our 7th match. Got a little dicey there at the end as we're going to rank up again here. Silver 3, moving up. But we were able to pull it out, as you can see here in just 1 second. Yep. Oh, we got our rewards. Invoke the wins, never going to play that. Some XP. But as you can see there, we got our 7 wins. Anyway, guys, this is the end of the video, so if you enjoyed, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, this has been Cooper MTG, and thanks so much for watching.